Create just dropped maybe the biggest update to a mod in the history of modded Minecraft with the post-production update. There's chain conveyors transporting items all over the place, packagers assembling boxes, a create alternative to AE2 and refined storage, and even full factory auto crafting. Whether you're a new modded Minecraft player or an experienced veteran, this update is full of features that are not just super useful for your Minecraft worlds, but more importantly, just plain fun. Welcome to Mod Labs, where we put mods and mod packs to the test by diving into new features, finding tips, tricks, and having a little fun along the way. In the next 35 minutes, we'll run through all the major features of the Create post-production update and see how they work together with the rest of the Create mod and even with other mods. And of course, we'll save the best item for last. You won't want to miss what's coming up. So enough yapping, let's get straight into it. Let's start with one of the easier blocks, the item hatch. The item hatch allows you to deposit tons of items into any inventory by right-clicking an item into it. So you can see if I right-click here with the logs, it deposits them straight into the chest. The item hatch works on all the different vanilla storage containers like chests, barrels, and even shulker boxes. The hatch even works with some of the other storage mods like functional storage here with drawers. You can use the hatch on a drawer controller and it'll fill drawers one at a time from the closest available drawer to the farthest in terms of distance from the controller block. Of course, because the Create mod always plays nice with itself, you can use the item hatch to input items directly onto conveyor belts, either from the end of a conveyor belt, or you can do it from the side as well. And probably most importantly, this works even on the item vaults in Create, which previously we didn't really have a great way to interact with. Putting items in a container one stack at a time is great and all, but where the item hatch gets really good is you can actually deposit an entire inventory all at once with one shift right click. Now this only works on your internal inventory and doesn't deposit items on your hotbar, but still, being able to do 27 stacks into an inventory at a time is pretty nice. If you wanted to, you can also put filters on the item hatches, either by doing specific items, so like here, if I only want stone, it'll take the stone, but none of the other items. Or you can use any of the create filters, so if I only put the valuable stuff in this filter, and throw the filter into the item hatch, and if I wanted to do everything from my inventory, it'll now only take the items from the filter and leave all the trashy stone stuff behind. Now, if you're a modded player like me, storage is always an issue. And although there are other mods out there like functional storage or even digital options like AE2 and RS, Create has never really given you many options to help store and organize items. But with this update, that all changes. The stock link, stock ticker, and Redstone Requester are the three fundamental items for starting a storage network with Create. Let's start with the stock link. The stock link is an item that, when placed on a packager, shares the contents of the inventory connected to the packager with the full network. This works on all kinds of inventories such as Create item vaults, chests, or even drawer controllers. The link can be connected to the same network anywhere in the world, but in order to connect to the network, at least part of the network must be chunk loaded. When placing a stock link, you can right-click anything else that's already on the storage network to add it to the network. Then when you place it on a packager, the packager will also turn green, showing you that it's fully connected. Now, these stock links don't really do a whole lot on their own, so we need to find a way to send requests to transmit or receive items to them. That's where the stock ticker comes into play. The stock ticker is a way to view and request all of the items in your storage network. Similar to the stock link, you right-click it to another item that's already on the network to link it, and then place it down. When you put a seed with a mob next to it, that mob will become your stock keeper. You can tell it works when the animal gets this cute little green hat. And then when you right-click a stock keeper, you get this awesome screen that shows you all of the items that are in that network. Whenever you want to pull items out of your system, you can basically click them and they'll go into this bar at the bottom. You can do one, you can scroll to take more, and then when you hit send, it'll send a request to the stock ticker where those items are coming from, and it will output a package, and inside that package is all the stuff you just requested. If you have a request which pulls items from multiple inventories on the network, in this case I'll do almost all the granite, you can send a request and it'll send out two packages. One package for the chest that contains all of its granite, and one from the item vault which fulfills the rest of the order. So this is super helpful, and you can use these with Frogports to kind of do a little bit more automation. But now this gives a really great way to use Create item vaults in a way that you can kind of use them similar to an ME system and just pour a bunch of items into them and use this to pull specifically out what you need. Now, the Redstone Requester is kind of a simplified version of the stock ticker that's a little bit better for automation. Like the other things, you have to tune it to a network. You'll see everything's tuned here. And when you place it down, you can right click it to bring up a menu which allows you to set up to 256 of 9 different items that you can set to be delivered to a specific address. So basically, anytime you provide a redstone signal to this, it will send out a request with whatever you configure here. So if I take one of our polished granite and ask the Redstone Requester to send us 1 polished granite, then anytime we click this lever, it'll send a request and give us that package, with our 1 polished granite. And you'll see if we do it multiple times, it'll send multiple packages and it'll start a little queue. So this can be kind of useful for automation, especially if you have farms or kind of automated crafting that uses a specific set of items every single time. And of course, you can use the addresses with the Frogports to send them to certain places. By far, the coolest and most fun new item added in the Create update is the Chain Conveyor. A chain conveyor is very similar to a normal Create conveyor belt, except for it's bi-directional, by having chains moving in opposite directions. Oh, and it's a chain instead of a belt. At each chain conveyor hub, you can connect multiple sets of chains in pretty much any direction you want. The chain conveyor hubs take rotation either from the bottom, or you can also do it from the top, whatever looks best. To make it even better, the chain conveyors add no stress units to your network, regardless if they're running at the lowest speed of 1 or even the maximum speed of 256. The max distance between 2 chain conveyors is 32 blocks, and there is a little bit of leeway that you can get when doing it at a slight offset angle, but still a really large distance to be able to transfer rotation. Connecting 2 chain conveyor hubs is easy. Just take a Minecraft chain and right click the 2 hubs that you want to connect. This takes 1 Minecraft chain for every 2 2/3 block distance between the hubs. All those facts are cool, and of course we'll get into some more uses with the chain conveyors with packages later, but one of the best parts of these chain conveyors is if you take a Create wrench, you can actually hop onto these and ride them around. Whenever you have a junction of multiple chains at a single hub, all you have to do is look in the direction you want to go and it'll send you that way. When at max speed, these chains move pretty quick, but let's put our science caps on and see just how fast they actually are compared to running around. And what better way to do that than with a little bit of a race on our racetrack here. Sprint jumping around 1 lap of the track took just over 1 minute, and a max speed chain ride was about twice as fast, only taking 33 seconds to complete a lap. Not much of a contest if we're being honest. Have you ever wanted to roleplay as an Amazon worker? Well, the Packager and Repackager allows you to do just that. The Packager allows you to pack items from an inventory into a cardboard box and transfer them around a little easier all in one group. Whether by conveyor belt, with chain conveyors, which I'll show a little later, as entities, or pretty much any other method that allows you to transfer items. To use the Packager, you place it facing the inventory you want it to pull items from. Then whenever you apply a redstone signal to the Packager, it will take items from the inventory and put them in a cute little cardboard package. The cardboard box itself doesn't require any resources to make, and it kind of just spawns out of nowhere as long as there's items to package. You can right-click the Packager to manually take out the package, and as you can see, all of the items are inside of it. Each package can hold up to 9 stacks of items, and it will attempt to take the first 9 stacks of items it finds in an inventory. If we right-click the package back into the Packager, it will unpack the box and return the items into the inventory. If you want to get creative, it actually returns the items back in the exact same order that it pulled them out, so depending on the situation, that could be super useful. You can automate packages further by using conveyor belts and funnels. So you'll see here when I create a new package, it gets pulled out of the packager and runs down the belt and then gets inserted into this barrel storing a bunch of other packages. Now, if we try to get creative and put another packager here to go full packageception and package a bunch of packages, say that 5 times fast, you'll notice that nothing really happens, and instead it just takes out the first package in the inventory and sends it on its way. That's where the repackager comes into play. The repackager allows you to take multiple packages and merge them together into one package. I'll show this in action a little bit later, but trust me, this is super useful for things like mechanical crafters or really any setup which requires multiple items that may be coming from different locations or at different times. Now, moving packages around on belts and by hand is fun and all, but this is Create. We gotta have some automation. And what better way to do that than with our new frog friends and the chain conveyors. Package Frogports are one of the coolest items added in this update, and they're pretty cute too. Package Frogports are how you basically move packages around using the chain conveyors. So you'll see we have a bunch of them set up here. We have our friend Frank, we have our friend Swampy, we have our friend Freddy, and our unnamed friend Package Frogport. To place a Frogport, you first right-click a spot on a chain conveyor to link it to that location. You can see the white box that shows you the current target, and then once you right click, it turns green. Then you place the Frogport down wherever you want it to go. The range is honestly pretty good and allows you to link to either chain direction or even directly to a spot on the chain conveyor if you want. When you right click Frogports, you get a UI with a couple useful options. At the top you have the name of the Frogport, which you can kind of think of as its address. It also has a small inventory which can hold a buffer of packages, as well as 2 options that allow you to pick if a Frogport can both send and receive packages, or only send them. These options can both be pretty useful depending on the context when you have more complex setups, especially when you don't want to accidentally have your packages sucked up by the wrong froggy. Let's start by taking our package that we had earlier with a bunch of stuff in it. We have Frank over here that is connected to a packager. So if we apply a redstone signal to the packager, it'll package the items just like before, except now Frank will Kirby the package and put it on the chain conveyor. You'll see it moves along the chains and gets caught by our other frog friend over here. So why did it go to this frog friend and not one of our other guys? That's because we didn't specify an address that we wanted Frank to send it to, so it went to the closest unnamed Frogport. You can set the address you want a package to go to by placing a sign on the packager and putting an address on the sign. Here we'll try to send a package to Swampy. This time when we send the package, Frank puts it on the chain, and instead of going to the right, this time it gets routed the different direction and gets picked up by Swampy. Since Swampy doesn't have any inventory attached, the package gets stored in his internal buffer. If instead we want to send the package to Freddy, we can update the sign, and this time the package will go to him. You can see I have a conveyor that takes the package from Freddy and feeds it directly into Swampy. Because we didn't change the address with the packager along the way, he'll just send it right back to Freddy and they'll send it back and forth for forever. When packages are moving along on a chain conveyor, you can do your best frog impression and grab them directly off the chains as well, or alternatively can place them directly on the chain and add them to the network. So what happens if we send a package with an address that doesn't match any of the Frogports on our network? Here I'll update the sign to Freddy2, which doesn't exist. Frank will still do his best to send the package, but once it gets to a conveyor hub, it'll just spin around aimlessly in circles forever. We can save the package from its suffering by finally giving our unnamed Frogport the name Freddy2, and the package automatically gets routed to the right place and picked up. These Frogports are super freaking cool, and this little demo doesn't even begin to scratch the surface on what you can do with them. Luckily, I have a little automation factory set up that we'll see later that shows you a little bit more about what they can do. I can see people are going to get extremely creative with these and do some really cool things. This update also adds a couple new aesthetic items that add some more flexibility when building. This includes 4 new window variants: the bamboo, industrial iron, and cherry. The bamboo and cherry windows, of course, are added to match the bamboo and cherry planks that were added in vanilla, and the industrial iron window is added to match some of the other industrial iron blocks that were added in a previous Create update. These windows have very nice connected textures similar to the other windows in Create and connect both vertically and horizontally, giving you lots of flexibility in your builds. Now, you may have noticed that I said 4 windows but only showed 3, and that's because I saved the best for last. This update adds 2 other new items, the block of weathered iron and the weathered iron window. The block of weathered iron is just a more weathered version of the industrial iron block and has a slight green tint with some specs to make it look a little bit older. But the windows that you can make from these blocks may be one of my new favorite blocks ever. When you place the window, they still have the same connected textures similar to the other Create windows, but they also have these awesome colored panes. Even better, the panes are randomized based on the orientation of the connected adjacent windows and their position in the world. It adds some really nice variety in the windows with the more muted colors and really gives off that old factory vibe. You can see how great they look in the context of a build a little later in the video, so keep your eye open for them. This update also adds tablecloths, which you can place similar to carpets. There are all 16 Minecraft color variations, and some of them definitely look a little better than others. But you can use them either on the floor in cool patterns, or more importantly, they can be used to make player shops. These player shops are definitely targeted for multiplayer servers, and honestly aren't really useful in single player, but they're still a pretty cool addition. You can set an item that you want to sell and a price item that you would like someone to pay in order to buy the item that's on top of the table. So if you want to buy one of these processing units here, you can right-click the shop to get a shopping list and try to give the shopping list to the shopkeeper to fulfill the order. Except I don't have any diamonds, so I'm going to need to find a way to pay for this. Luckily, I've been neglecting my wheat farm and we have some harvesting to do. That's a lot of wheat and seeds. And luckily, we have a chicken over here who really likes both of those things. We can right-click each of the tablecloths to add them to our shopping list, which you can see I have 2 sets of both wheat and seeds. Then we give the list to our chicken friend, and he'll give us a package with our diamonds. Of course, we have a lot more wheat and seeds, so let's make a shopping list that has a couple stacks of each to be a little bit more efficient. That's a pretty good day at the office. Now that we have some diamonds, we can come through and pick up a shopping list. I'll buy a couple of these, we'll say 4 of them. And with our hard-earned diamonds, we can give it to our villager, and he'll give us our processing units, which I think are going to come very handy in our next video. To set up a player shop, all you need is one of the Create tablecloths. Any of the 16 colors will do. You right-click on your shopkeeper with the tablecloth, which will bring up the inventory screen. Then you set the contents that you would like to sell. You click on the item in your storage network to add them at the row at the bottom. If you want, you can pick to sell multiple items in a package deal, but I'll just do a single item here. You can also change the number of items you sell at a time with the scroll wheel. Once finished, you press the configure button to set the trade. You hear a nice little ding, and you'll see the tablecloth glowing in your inventory, as well as text on the item description confirming that the item shop has been configured and what item or items it will try to sell. Then place the tablecloth on a block. Here I chose a brass scaffolding. You'll see the item you're trying to sell, and you'll also see a spot in the corner with the price of what you're going to sell your item for. Right now it's empty, meaning the item is free, and we definitely don't want that. So I'll right-click a diamond in the slot to set the item as the price, and you can right-click to set the pricing item amount. And that's it. Now you have a fully functional player shop. No need for those janky plugins with weirdly formatted signs from the old days. If you know, you know. There's also a couple other items that we haven't talked about yet. There's a new filter called the package filter, which can be used in any component with a filter slot. It'll sort any cardboard packages depending on the address that you put in the filter. I have a clipboard in my inventory, so it has autocomplete for some of the other address locations I have set up in a factory you'll see shortly. There's also another item called a factory gauge, which is honestly slightly complicated, but is also one of the coolest and most powerful Create items yet. However, because they're pretty difficult to explain, I think it'll be a little bit easier to show you. And then the last item is so special that I have to save it for the end of the video. But trust me, this item is well worth the wait. The pulse timer is a simple but super useful item for all of your redstone creations. It's set up with basically 3 parts. There's the input, the output, which is the redstone torch, and the middle, which allows you to configure a time in either ticks, seconds, or minutes. The pulse timer does pretty much exactly what its name implies by sending a quick redstone pulse on a timer based on the configured duration in the middle. The default amount is 20 ticks or 1 second, but can go as quick as every 2 ticks and send out a max speed spam of redstone pulses, or as slow as 60 minutes or an hour. By default, the timer is active as soon as you place it down and will run forever. However, you can send an input redstone signal of any strength to pause the timer from outputting. Then it'll pick up right where it left off once the input signal is turned off. Cardboard is one of the key materials added in this Create update. It's so important that it does something even emeralds can't do, and that's make armor. You can make a full set of cardboard armor. Now, granted, it's literally made of paper, so each piece only adds 1 armor point, which makes it by far the worst set in terms of damage mitigation. But what it lacks in protection, it gains in some pretty cool other ways. We'll get to that in a second. On top of the cardboard armor set, you can also make a cardboard sword, although honestly not sure that sword is the word I'd use to describe this thing. It has an insanely fast attack speed to the point that you can almost spam click like you're back in 2013. And the best part is it looks like a little cardboard roll that you'd find in the middle of a paper towel roll. Let's put it to the test with some friends over here. As you can see, it does literally no damage, but has a huge knockback and makes the best noise ever. I could literally listen to that all day. So, like I mentioned earlier, the cardboard armor has some pretty cool extra perks. It looks a little derpy when standing, but that's because when you shift, you go Transformers mode and pack yourself into a little cardboard box. It's super cute, especially the little hop when moving around, but also functional because it actually changes your hitbox to be less than a block tall, allowing you to get into tight spaces, a lot like when flying or crawling with an elytra. If you have some friends try to come attack you while wearing the armor, you can go into box form and the hostile mob will lose sight of you and not attack. Not a lot of object permanence with zombies, I guess. This works on every Minecraft mob that I've tested it on so far, even creepers, which can save your builds from surprise creeper attacks. Now, if you get too close to a mob, they will notice your disguise and still attack, but once you get more than a couple blocks away, they'll forget you're there. The armor and sword set is honestly pretty good in large groups of mobs, which allows you to knock them back, and if you get into trouble, just go into box form and can sneak away easily. The cardboard stuff may not be my modded armor and sword of choice, but you have to admit, a pretty cool and unique concept. Now that we've seen all the different pieces that the new Create update adds, let's take a look at an example of how they can work together to make some awesome factories full of all kinds of different automations. So let's go ahead and swap out the lab floor and swap in our Create Whoa. That's not the factory. Well, hey, while I have you here, did you know that you can get a Minecraft server or tons of other games hosted using Ackless? And by using code MCTC, you can get a full 20% off.
Whoa, no way!
Shout out to Ackless for not only helping make this video possible, but also running the Twitch subscriber server for all of you guys to hang out on, play different mod packs, and make some really cool builds. Link in the description. Alright, let's try that again. We'll unload this and try this button instead. Ah, there we go. There's the Create Factory. Alright, let's go take a look and see what's inside. Welcome to Create Factory. In here you can see we have a slightly crazy setup of all kinds of different Create pieces, old and new. Here you can see we have our hustling and bustling factory that's going crazy, sending packages all over the place with all kinds of automation. So, how does the system know what to do and where these packages are coming from? That's where the factory gauges that I mentioned earlier come into play. Before I explain what this board is and how it's working, let's start with the basics. Factory gauges at their core are pretty simple. When given an item, they show the amount of that item that are currently in a storage network. Similar to the other storage network items, we first need to tune the gauge to our network, and then we'll place it down on our workboard. You can right-click our target item, here we'll do gravel, and it shows the number 31, which if we check with our stock keeper, you can see there is 31 gravel in our storage system. So that's kind of cool on its own, but the reason that these gauges are so powerful is because we can set a recipe that uses items from other gauges to set up automatic crafting recipes. When you right-click a gauge, it brings up a screen that allows you to pick a target amount. This is the amount of items that you want your network to attempt to keep in stock at all times. And whenever the amount is below the target amount, the system will start to autocraft based on the recipe you give it until it reaches its target. Now, before we start setting up some recipes, let's look at the different stations we have set up in the factory to help us do this. So the first setup we have is our stock keeper, who shows all the items we have stored in our network. These items are split over a couple different item vaults, which all have the address vault, as well as a small drawer set up over there. I have two Frogports set up here. We have an access Frogport and an empty one. And these are what I use to send items to and from. So let's say I want to get some spruce and some andesite, go to access and I hit send, and now it'll send the request, and you'll see the items come and get put in this chest here. And then whenever I want to input anything back into the system, I can just use this chest as my dump chest. It'll automatically get sent and sent to the right place. We have this send Frogport automated with a redstone block, as well as a sign that sends packages to any of the Frogports with the address vault. Over here, I have a little cobblestone generator. Nothing crazy here, just a very simple cobblestone generator, but what you'll notice is it has a redstone link on it, and it's not active right now. So why is it not active? There's one more feature with factory gauges that we haven't talked about yet. Remember earlier when I mentioned that you can set target inventory amounts? Well, when a gauge has greater than or equal to its target amount, it will send a redstone signal, and when it's below that amount, it won't. So by pulling some cobblestone out of the system, you can see the redstone link turns off, and that gets the cobblestone generator back up and running until it gets back up to 16 stacks. When active, the cobblestone gets output into this chest, and whenever there's items in the chest, we have this Frogport again automatically send whatever items it creates to the vault. Next up is a simple station I have set up with the address crusher. It takes packages addressed to crusher and outputs them directly onto a conveyor belt, which sends them through these max speed crushing wheels, and then sends the resulting items back to the vault. Next to it, I have a station with the address mixer with the same overall idea, except items are instead input into a basin for a mixer to mix the items. There's a chute attached with a filter for the finished result to be moved to a depot, which then the packager will pick up and send back to the vault. Now here is a mechanical crafter setup with the Frogports. And remember earlier that I mentioned we were going to need a repackager? This is where they come into play. So you'll see I have a Frogport over here with the address crafter. Now, because we have different storage places, some items might be coming from here, some items might be coming from our vaults, or some items could even be coming from one of the other setups we've already discussed. Those packages would all get sent to Crafter, and in order to use any recipe in the mechanical crafter, all of the items have to arrive in one package. So the repackager, when it has multiple packages, will repackage them into a single item and send that in and unpackage it directly into the mechanical crafter, which will do the build and then send it back into the vault. The last station is a little bit of a mess, but this is an automated setup to do a multi-step processing recipe to craft train tracks. We have the address track crafter, which takes both slabs and iron nuggets. The slabs get output onto the belt, and the iron nuggets get output on the opposite side, which then get split so they go half and half into the deployers. The slabs get double iron nuggets deployed and one final bonk to finish the craft before getting sent back to the vault. Now, that's a bunch of different stations and addresses that we probably could remember, but hey, why work harder than we have to? The create clipboards add a way to save addresses so you can use autocomplete on anything that takes an address input. To do this, you right-click a Frogport with an address set to add it to the clipboard. You'll notice in the clipboard that it has a different icon next to an address than the checkbox that you normally have when manually typing. We'll go through and add all of our different addresses to the clipboard. And now when we go to our stock keeper, you'll see a nice little list that we can click instead of having to type it ourselves. Alright, now we're ready to start setting up some automation. Back to our gravel factory gauge. Let's set up a recipe so our system can maintain that target amount that we set earlier. Luckily, one of the ways that we can make gravel is by crushing cobblestone, and we already have a setup for crushing, and we have an infinite amount of cobblestone. To set up a recipe for that, we right click and we say add a new connection for a new input item, and then we can right click the gauge that we want the input item to be. So we'll right click cobblestone. Right now the gauge is missing a couple things, so the little light is red, meaning it's not active. When we right click it, we can first double check our recipe. Right now it auto filled in that one cobblestone gives one gravel, which is correct. But we also need to set the target address that will execute this recipe. So we'll go ahead and click crusher and we're done. you'll see the line turns blue, meaning that crafting is in progress, and it automatically starts sending cobblestone to the crusher. And as that finishes, it sends the gravel back. And once it gets to our target amount, which was 1 stack, this will turn green and it will complete. Now, right now, this is doing this one at a time, which is pretty slow and not very efficient. So what we can do is we can go in and we can update the expected values. So instead of only crafting one at a time to make 1 gravel, we can instead ask it to craft 64 cobblestone, which makes 64 gravel. So now it'll go a little bit quicker. It'll send a full stack. Our crusher, because it's running so quickly, will be able to handle it super fast. And once it sends it back, we'll see this turns green because it's completed. Now, the arrows here are really cool, but you'll see because we have so much stuff here, it gets a little crowded. So you can right click this and move the gauge, and this allows you to relocate the panel somewhere on the board. So we'll right click here, and now it's a little bit easier to see how those arrows are working. So let's quickly talk through how the rest of the tracks are set up. We have 3 input items. We have the spruce logs, the tuff, and the andesite. And we use those 3 raw materials and put them through multiple sets to get to our final target, the tracks. So we have a couple processing lines set up. You can see this top one, we have logs, which craft into planks, which craft to slabs. And this is all done with the crafter. So if you go in here, you can see we have a recipe which says use mechanical crafter for spruce slabs, and that is crafted on the crafter. And feeding into that, we have planks, which also uses the mechanical crafter, and you can see packaged ingredients in the crafter, and all of that goes into here. So right now this isn't running because we have 40 of the 32, but if we instead change this to be 1 whole stack, we can see that it'll start sending items, and those items will get routed all the way to our crafter and start making slabs. Now, as those slabs get crafted, we now have gone under our amount of spruce planks, so this is smart enough to automatically start sending more logs to craft into planks, and it will keep crafting until all 3 target values are hit. Train tracks are a pretty common create ingredient that I always find myself needing more of, so let's look at an example automation flow that covers an end-to-end setup. To make our first item, the iron nugget, we can crush tuff. So we'll set up a recipe that takes a stack of tuff and has an expected return value of 8 iron nuggets. With andesite and iron nuggets, I went ahead and added a recipe for andesite alloy since that's another critical item we'll need a whole bunch of. So to do that, I added a simple recipe combining the 2 in a mixer. And then for the train tracks, we take our iron nuggets and slabs, which we craft the same way we did with the spruce slabs, and we do those in the track crafter. And that's it. Track automation is complete. Now, we already have a stack in our system fulfilling the target amount, so let's up that to 8 stacks and watch the system run. Now, this is really a small and simple example of how all these cool new automation items work, but hopefully it's just enough to get your minds turning on how powerful these setups can be at scale. Imagine huge factories with tons of different mini machines all synchronized together and operated by a huge board of factory gauges. And hey, this has just been the create stuff so far, but this works just as well with all kinds of other mods. It may not be as quick as AE2 or refined storage automation, but it's definitely a pretty cool different approach to automation that feels a little more grounded in a vanilla Minecraft feel. And hey, it looks pretty amazing as well. I mean, seriously, look at all these packages flying everywhere. You can't tell me that isn't one of the coolest things you've seen in Minecraft. I've really had a good time playing with these, and I can't wait to dive into them even deeper in some of my upcoming playthroughs. If you're interested in watching, I stream on Twitch 2 to 3 times a week, playing through all different kinds of mod packs. There's a link in the description, and we'd love to see you there. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and more importantly, hope you guys enjoy this new update as much as I have so far. This is my first YouTube video on the main channel in a while. Sorry about that, but I'm super excited to keep Mod Labs growing and already have some great ideas for some upcoming videos. Make sure to like and subscribe, and definitely leave a comment if you have any questions about this mod or even suggestions for things you'd like to see in the future. Trust me, I actually read and respond to them. That's all for this one. Thanks for watching, and wait. I almost forgot the most important item that was added in this update.